Craic and the Bat, which is a little interview section that we do for the Irish American Baseball Society. The Irish American Baseball Society is a society of Irish people who love baseball and baseball people who love Ireland. And I am delighted to be joined today by Hall of Famer Jim Palmer. Jim, thank you for taking the time to do this with us.
Well, you're welcome. My pleasure, actually.
And I want to also thank our good friend Rick Vaughan, who set this up. Rick's a good friend. I don't know if you knew this. Did you know that? Now I know that you threw a no-hitter in 1969. You know that Rick threw a no-hitter in college?
No.
Yes. He doesn't. Well, he's very shy about stuff like that. But yeah, he actually has. I actually have the baseball, the last out from the game with George Mason. So, there's something that you guys share. So, so much we want to talk about. But the funny thing was, last week our last interview was with Jack O'Connell, who is secretary of the baseball writers. And he has a wonderful job of calling you to tell you've been inducted in the Hall of Fame. When you got inducted back in 1990, I believe.
Yes.
It was Jack Lang. And I believe there's a funny story there because I happened to mention it to Rick. I said, God, I must ask Jim if he remembers, the phone call. He says, don't.
Well, so, no, I had a friend who said, he owned a restaurant. He said, listen, I want to have people over because, you're going to get in the Hall of Fame. And I had talked to Jack Lang and he said, listen, I can't tell you whether you got in the Hall of Fame or not, but he said, where are you going to be between 7 and 8 o'clock? And I said, I really don't know. So as it turned out, I'm sure the Orioles told him that I was going to be at Hirsch's Orchard Inn was my friend's restaurant. So we go over there and, and Jack had said, listen, you did win 3 Cy Youngs. You did win more games in the 70s than anybody else. So you kind of dominated your era, but I can't tell you you're getting into the Hall of Fame. So it gets to be about 8:45. And my stepson, BJ, says, Jim, it's not looking very good because it said they call it between 7 and 8. Somebody had told Jack in the Hall of Fame that I was at a crab place that was actually closed in the winter. So it took them an extra hour or so and finally Jack called and I answered the phone and he said, I have bad news and I have good news. He said, the bad news, 33 writers didn't vote for you. The good news, 411 did. So, because I told my friend, I said, what if I don't get in? He said, well, we'll do it next year. I said, well, this is going to get expensive. So as it turned out, Joe Morgan and I got in 1990 and I mean, terrific player, won 2 MVPs. It's funny when you do the induction, Shaun, he spoke first, but, he passed away last summer. And but for the next, 20 years, 25 years, he said, thank God you spoke first. I said, Joe, you spoke first. So, you do get a little nervous. And the other thing that happened, during the induction, that July was we had a rain delay. In other words, they couldn't do it on Sunday. So we did it. We're going to do it again on Monday, but it was raining just as hard. And we did it in a little gymnasium. So, and then the night before I actually, normally what happens, you get inducted on Sunday afternoon and you go back to the Otesaga Hotel. They give you the Hall of Fame rings and they have a dinner with just back then it would have been the league presidents and then the commissioner of baseball. So I actually got to go to that dinner before I got into the Hall of Fame. And Ted Williams grabbed a microphone and Stan Musial, one of the great players of all time with, 3,630 hits, 1,815 at home and 1,815 on the road. I don't know how he ever figured that out or pulled that off. He had been ill and Ted actually passed the microphone around and everybody said how nice it was to see Stan back and Yogi mentioned, it wasn't a scripted thing, but I got to see a little bit what it was like before I even did the induction of what it's like to be in the Hall of Fame. That, obviously it's a select group of players, but they also, because of the history and the fact that, they played against each other, a lot of them, were mortal enemies in a sense, if you played for the Yankees, you wanted to beat the Red Sox, et cetera, et cetera. So we got a little glimpse of it. So it made the induction speak even a little bit more difficult.
I was thinking about that. I was going to ask you about that because going in 1990, so many of what are now considered the immortals were still alive. Like you mentioned, Musial and Ted Williams, and I mean, obviously, I think DiMaggio and those guys. I don't know if they were there, but they were alive. I mean, now, so you so grew up in Manhattan, moved to California. Did you root for a particular team?
Oh, I was a Yankee fan.
So
Yeah. And
who was your idol?
Well, whoever hit a home run on Saturday, the game of the week, which, you know, could have been Mickey Mantle or it could have been John Blanchard. Seemed like he hit a home run every Saturday. He was a backup catcher and, you know, left-handed pull hitter in Yankee Stadium. You know, it's what, 296 down the line in the old stadium and, you know, 305, I think, or 301 down the left field line. But I mean, it went to 461 or 3 in center field with flagpoles. And that's where the original Monument Park was. I mean, I saw Pepitone hit a ball 462 feet. It was the triple.
Yeah.
And I saw Andy Etchebarren, my rookie year in 1965, hit a ball up the gap. Roy White, who played the deepest left field in the history of left fields because it was 457 to the power alley. Etch hit a ball up the gap and got it inside the park home run. Bill Stafford actually threw it at me. He threw the ball over my head the next pitch, but he didn't last long. So I had come in relief in that ball game. So yeah, Yankee Stadium. I mean, I went there. My dad took me there on the two. You know, if you ever saw City Slickers, remember when Billy Crystal talks about they're out in the, the middle of New Mexico and he's with his buddy and Jack Palance is the trail boss. And he says, tell me about your greatest day ever. And Billy talks about 1955 when his dad took him to Yankee Stadium. It was before color television. Well, I went in 1954 and it had rained. It was a Tuesday night and the Yankees were playing the Indians, who broke my heart because they won the most games ever that year. I think they won 100 and maybe 11 games, something like that. I think that was eventually the Mariners won more and maybe the Yankees 1 year. But so, he talked about going to Yankee Stadium. Well, I went on that Tuesday night and it rained. And when you walk through the tunnel before color television, you really have no idea how green the grass is. So I kind of had a love affair, not only with the Yankee Stadium. I mean, I was 30-16 against the Yankees, a lifetime. I always wanted to be a Yankee. I mean, it's funny, when I retired, George Steinbrenner actually sent me a letter congratulating me and, for the rivalry and whatever. And I mean, I'd love to go to Yankee Stadium as a kid. I went to the Polo Grounds, never made Ebbets Field, because this was, if you were born in 1945 and so you were, 8 or 9, in the early 50s, seemed like it was the Yankees and the Dodgers in every World Series. They only won the 1 year, I think, in 1955. And the irony is, Don Larson actually was on the Orioles when I got there in 1965, and he pitched a perfect game in 1956. And when I moved to California, as you mentioned, between geography and history, you had that little transistor radio you put up on your ear, and you'd see how the Yankees were doing. And I was a Yankee fan, and I always wanted to play for the Yankees. But I was a year before the draft, so I could have signed with anybody. And my mom was in Las Vegas because we lived in Scottsdale, Phoenix area, and she went to Las Vegas. And one of the Yankee scouts tapped her on the shoulder. She said, "We're going to sign your son." And you know what? I guess I end up coming back from South Dakota, where I went to a college league. I was the only high school player in that league. And we had a car crash on the way back. The guy driving my car fell asleep. We rolled the car 3 times, demolished it. I cut my knee. He cut his arm. We jumped in. We had a couple of our teammates behind us jumped in the car, and I ended up signing that night. The next day, 10 teams called. Wow. So I'm sure one of them was the Yankees, but I ended up signing with the Orioles, and turned out, 6 World Series and all those playoffs turned out to be a pretty good decision.
So the $50,000 that you got from the Orioles helped to get
40,000. That's 40,000. Seemed like 50. When you're 17,
everything you read on Wikipedia. Well, actually, that was something I was going to ask you about. So, you grew up in Manhattan. You moved to LA. You moved to Scottsdale, and then you go to, was it Pheasant?
The Aberdeen Pheasants.
What was South Dakota like?
Well, I'd already played when I played American Legion ball when I was a junior. So my senior year, I go 10-0. I pitched 5 no-hitters. And I led the state in scoring in basketball, caught 65 passes. I was a pretty good all-around athlete. So I had a lot of options. I could have gone to UCLA. ASU actually had a better basketball team in 1963 than the Bruins, who would go on with John Wooden to win all those national championships. So I loved basketball. I threw so hard. I was a good hitter. I got astigmatism, so I couldn't wear glasses and pitch. So my hitting kind of went downhill because I thought I was going to be an outfielder. But so Bobby Winkles was the coach at ASU, and he said, "You need to go to a college league up in South Dakota with 4 of our players. Now you got to make the team." So I went up there at 17. I was the only high school player. Bobby Floyd was a shortstop out of UCLA. He actually played shortstop, and that I pitched my no-hitter. He was on our team. Merv Rettenman, who had a long career, he was from Ball State. He played the outfield and caught. Carl Morton would win 18 games. You know, he's a right fielder, but he later on he pitched with the Montreal Expos. And Jim Lombard, who 4 years later would win a Cy Young Award, was on our team from Stanford. But I was the only high school player, so I made the team. I did pretty well, and so I knew what South Dakota was about. People were fabulous. Winter was even a smaller town than Aberdeen. Aberdeen I think Pierre might have been the capital, but it was a small town. I played for Cal Ripken Sr. And it's interesting, you asked that question because we had a really good team. We won 14 straight games down in Thomasville, Georgia, where our spring training was, about 45 miles from Tallahassee. And we beat Earl Weaver's AA team all over the ballpark. So we won 14 in a row in spring training, 25 out of the first 29 games. But opening day, we're out on the field. It can get pretty chilly, in April, and we didn't have a lot of clothes. I mean, you had a thin sweatshirt, you might have had a little nylon jacket, and it's 38, 40 degrees. And we're sitting on, out in the outfield, and he pointed at the empty stands, and Cal said, listen, the only reason we're here is because of the people that are going to come see us play. He said, we're going to come to the ballpark every day and never let anybody outwork us. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to come to the ballpark every day and get a little bit better collectively, because we all want to go to the next level. I was in high A, I guess they would call it now. Northern League was the highest of the four minor league teams, A-ball teams the Orioles had. So, and he said, we're going to have fun, which means we're going to win. And the other thing is there are no such things as shortcuts. And think about that. I mean, this is you're 18 years old. You're making $414 after you pay your taxes. You're living in a basement. When it rained, your shoes would float to the corner because it flooded. $3 a day meal money, 10, 12, 14-hour bus rides. But you want to play in the big leagues. I mean, that's your dream. So you're willing to do anything. And, Cal was the greatest. He had been a young catcher, hurt his shoulder, and he got into coaching. And we know what his son did. I mean, Cal's Jr. played 2,632 consecutive games. And they always said, there was Billy Ripken and Cal Jr. that played for the Orioles and played in the big leagues. And every time Cal Sr. would do a coaching thing, or, what do you call them? On the weekends, he would do where he'd go out and show people. It's a clinic of sorts. Cal Jr., because he never saw his dad, would go with him. And I'm sure that had a lot to do with the fact that, Cal understood how you need to play the game. I'm talking about his son, who ended up in the Hall of Fame with over 400 home runs and 3,000 hits. So, yeah, I couldn't think of having a better manager. And then, of course, he would come to the Orioles and be a third base coach and kind of be a confidant for, the rest of my career.
Rick Vaughn has said that when he was with the Orioles, that, PR guy, he would get there pretty much before the players would. And, he would get there, and Cal Sr. would be lathered in sweat because he had basically manicured the infields himself
Well, he did everything. The Orioles came to see us in Aberdeen, and it was a big deal. I mean, Major League Club coming to high A, and it was rain in the forecast. So Cal Sr. went to a retread tire place and got, we didn't have a tarp. If it rained, usually the game would be rained out. He got tarps from the hardware store. He got tires. So when it rained, they put the tarps out on the infield so you could play, so you would keep it dry, and then he put the tires on it. And, when the rain stopped, the game started, and, we ended up playing. I mean, I got to see Milt Pappas and Steve Barber, the first 20-game winner for the Orioles pitch. And it was an amazing thing. But, and then I would they said, do you want to go to the major leagues? Because we may have to keep you on the roster, in 1965. This was the year after I'd been in Aberdeen, South Dakota. I said, sure. He said, well, you need to go to instructional league. So who was my manager down in instructional league? Cal Ripken Sr. So he really had a lot to, he taught me, along with George Maverick, who was a terrific pitching coach, taught me to throw the ball low and away to right-handed batters. And if you can do that, you can throw the ball anywhere. You got to have the perfect windup to do it. I was listening to a Zoom from Jacob deGrom, and all the writers are going, wow, you threw 4 balls, 99 to 102 miles per hour. And he said, I don't care about velocity. I care the fact that I threw the ball low and away. And baseball is going to get back to that. We got all the analytics and whatever, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a good windup, I met Max Scherzer after he left Arizona, went to the Tigers, and talking to Verlander, who I met when I spoke at he went to Old Dominion. I'd been down there, so I met him when he was a junior in college, and he introduced me to him, and he said, "Do you have any suggestions?" I said, "Well, just be able to repeat your windup with your stuff. It will never be easy, but it'll be less difficult." And last night pitched a whale of a game, gave up the one home run. It kind of reminded me, I'm sitting there watching that game and I'm thinking, Vida Blue, as good as Vida was, he won 209 games. The only game he won in the postseason was a game I lost 1-0. He pitched a 2-hitter, I pitched a complete game, and Sal Bando hit a 4th inning home run, and that was the difference in the game. And so all home runs can, you never figure they're going to beat you. But last night, and the Dodgers hadn't lost a game in Dodger Stadium since like August 29th.
Yeah.
So it was a big win for the Giants.
It was good. So you're you're broadcasting the Orioles, which, having been Mr. Oriole, I mean, it's got to be tough to watch what you're watching now. But I mean, there's some good young players on that team. There's some. Do you see a turning point coming?
Well, I hope so. I mean, Mike Elias came over from the Astros. He went to Yale. Was a scout with the Cardinals. With Jeff Luhnow, went down to Houston. He was. I mean, a lot of good stuff happened in Houston. A lot of bad stuff happened in Houston. But he came to the Orioles winter of 2018. So they're trying to rebuild through their minor leagues and draft system. Now, what does the draft system reward? Being very mediocre. They did it in Houston. Not all those, they got Bregman, they got Correa, they got McCullers who could fit today. So they did well in the draft. But, they also made a couple of mistakes and whatever. So it's not a foolproof thing. But you play in the American League East, that the Red Sox and the Yankees are going to outspend you. Now with Rogers Communication that the Blue Jays, with a great young bevy of young talent, they got Rayu for $80 million for 4 years. They went out and got, Barrios from Minnesota. He's got 1 more year. So, everybody's going to outspend you. And then, Tampa Bay, who won 100 games for the first time and just got beat by the Red Sox, they're going to outthink you. So it's a tough division. But you're right. I mean, Cedric Mullins, first 30 player in the history of the Orioles. And the Orioles had a lot of great players. Mount Russell, Captain Swish in April, and ends up being, hitting 33 home runs, the Rookie of the Year vote. Austin Hayes can play the outfield, had a really nice year, hit over 20 home runs. Urias is just a fringe player. Mancini came back from colon cancer. Maybe didn't have the year he had, back in 2019 when he had 35 home runs, but had a nice year. So they have some good young players. Pitching, it's very tough to pitch in Camden Yards. And they don't, John Means is the real deal. He's a really good pitcher, but they need some arms. So it's going to take a while, and, we'll see. And even when it's funny, when Earl Weaver who was my Hall of Fame manager, he never liked us to throw at guys. And the reason was not that, he had played, so he knew it hurt when you got hit, but he didn't want anybody on our team to get hurt. And when you get into those throwing battles, invariably somebody gets hit in the wrist or the hand or the head or the neck or, the knee or whatever, and they're out. So we had a guy, Grant Jackson, passed away, I think last summer, and he throws the ball up and in, and Earl raced to the mound. He goes, "Take a look at our third baseman. Is he better than their guy?" And he went right around the field, and all our guys were better than the teams we were playing. And then that's why we were in 6 World Series and 9 playoffs and whatever. It's going to take a while for the Orioles to get back to where they can be comparable to, an Aaron Judge in right field who had a great year or whatever. But hopefully they're on that road to doing that. But it's going to be through the minor league draft. And I think if you're a free agent pitcher, you don't want to go to Camden Yards to pitch because it's a bandbox. It is really small. There's only one pitcher's park in the American League East, and that's Tampa.
Yeah. So as a former player, Hall of Famer, what do you buy into analytics? Do you think, I mean, do you think it has a part, or are you over whips and wops and all these?
Well, no, I mean, whips are important because that's, amount of walks and hits you give up per inning. So that's always, we used to always say, do you give up less hits than innings pitched? I mean, I probably walked a guy every 3 innings. Maddox probably walked a guy every 1.8 innings. I'm all for analytics if it's not the end all. I mean, the irony of the Orioles is I won my first game in the big leagues with a home run off Jim Bouton playing the Yankees. It came in relief when I was 19 and hit a home run to right field. And so I could hit a little bit, and I enjoyed hitting. I mean, everybody does when you get a big hit. The year after we all won 20 games in 71, and I won 22 games because it seemed like every time I got a hit, I won a game because I pitched well and, a lot of close games and whatever. So, but Mullins had a great year. Mountcastle had a great year. Austin Hayes came from, being hurt to having a great year. And guess who they fired? The hitting instructor.
Hitting coach.
So, and he's a fabulous guy. If somebody doesn't pick up Don Long, they're missing the boat because I don't, and again, this is all part of the analytics and the swing vest. I mean, I was talking to Don, and maybe this is the reason why you get let go, even though his young hitters really seem to, have great years. He said, if there's more to hitting than just having a swing vest on and what launch angle is and all that. I mean, I saw Ted Williams tap his bat on the plate in 1969 when the Senators came down from Pompano Beach to play us in Miami. And he said, boys, and everybody ran out there, of course, because it was Ted Williams. He said, 6-degree upswing, and preferably get a good pitch to hit, preferably a fastball. So I don't think anything ever really changes. You still want to get a good pitch to hit. You don't want to swing at pitcher's pitches early in the count. What does the pitcher want you to do? He wants to throw strike one and then get you to swing at balls. So the guys throw strike one and aren't in the hitters' counts have a better chance of being successful. The hitters that say, I don't really have to swing till I get 2 strikes. I know my strength. Now, if analytics can help you, I'm all for it. But the amazing thing is, everybody talks about how important runs are. And, now what we have the 3 outcomes, we have either home run, strikeouts, or walks, right? And if you go back, I'll give you 2 years since they started testing for steroids in 2005. From 2007 to 2021, runs per game are down. So you tell me how the new hitting philosophy is working. Let's get the ball in the air. Let's strike out. It's okay. Now, Earl Weaver told us when a guy would hit into a double play, or whatever, he goes, help us. Yeah, I can't tell you the language, but he would, strike out, pop up, save us an out. So Earl knew that you only get 27 outs. So I'm all into analytics, but they're not the end all. In pitching, if you don't have a good windup and you can't throw the low and away fastball, which means you have a good windup, I don't know how you can be successful. Yeah. And we had the highest ERA in the history of the Orioles this year, and the pitching coach stayed.
Do you think that there's, I'm hoping at some point that there's going to come, where they'll come and not come to their senses, where basically they'll realize that scouting and, plays every bit as much a part as the analytics, We're coming near the end. I have a question from one of our viewers, Ed Muirholtz. I don't know, Ed used to be involved with the Babe Ruth Museum. And he was asking, he said, he wanted to know what your thoughts were. They said that, now a starting pitcher basically throws 100 pitches, or a lot less, maybe 5-6 innings, whereas in your day it was anywhere from 125 to 140. You usually went complete games or maybe 8 innings and then a reliever. Do you think this is because the money they're paying the starting pitchers, or is it the analytics with the like long relief, mid relief, designated pitchers roles?
Well, I think what he's probably alluding to is even before you got into analytics are using the TrackMan cameras and the Rapsodo cameras where you release points and all that. Our cameras were our feel and our touch. I used to play a lot of golf with Jim Codd, who won 283 games, 16 straight Gold Gloves. He said, "Don't you?"
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he should be. And I want to be on the committee because one pitcher won more games for about 16 years in baseball, and that was Bob Gibson. And we know he's one of the all-time greats. So with that said, Jim used to say, don't you think it's touch and feel? What they look at now is what your batting average is the third time through the order. You know, there was a great article about 10 days ago about Tyler Kepner, who wrote it in the New York Times about Adam Wainwright, why he's been able to be successful at age 40, because he can pitch. You know, he's not a thrower. He's got a great curveball, throw it in any count, stays out of the middle of the plate, all the things that we were taught. Now, the good pitchers do that, but they just look at your batting average the third time through the order. And if they have a guy that has a lower batting average against out in the bullpen, that guy's coming into the bullpen, you know, from the bullpen to pitch. But you've seen it, you know, you saw it in 2019 with Houston. Their bullpen was exhausted, and they, you know, they had what, Cole and Verlander and all those kind of guys. So at the end, I mean, the relievers will never, they're like gladiators. They're going to warm up every day and do what they have to do. You saw that, and you're going to see it in the playoffs. And now that we get to the championship series, get a little bit more time to take a breath because it's 4 out of 7, but 3 out of 5 goes really quickly. You know, I mean, you know, and you know, Tampa saw that, but they you know, Snell's playing for Padres. Glasnow got hurt. Morton pitching for the Atlanta Braves. So they lost 3 really good starters, and they still won 100 games. So you can do it maybe for 162 games, but at the end of the day, I think when you play all the way to the end of October, because everybody said, you know, when the Red Sox won in 2018, none of their starters pitched in spring training, and they said, "Oh, we're saving them because, you know, we're expecting to be in the postseason again." It's the relievers you need to give time off of, because they're exhausted when the years. You know, I mean, my first game in '66 when we won our first World Series, I threw 177 pitches, hit a home run, and they asked Harry the Cat Perkeen, our left-handed pitcher, had been a great pitcher with the Cardinals, "What do you want to see Palmer do?" He said, "Well, I want to get that pitch count down into the 140, 145 range." But that's, you know, and I'd had a 5-inning and a 6-inning start in spring training. And in my first game in Fenway, where you're trying, you know, it's Fenway Park, Yaz, all those kind of guys. And, you know, you throw 177 pitches because they let you, and that's what you did in high school or Pony League or Babe Ruth League in Hawaii or whatever, you know, trying to win a championship. So I just, and I'll leave you with this. I think anybody that pitched in my era, you learn so much about yourself when you do have to get Carl Yastrzemski and Carlton Fisk and Jim Rice out the 4th time in Fenway Park with a 1-run lead. Now, it doesn't always work out that way, but now the analytics tell you, okay, how are we going to win? You know, and I still think and they baby guys, one of the best young pitchers in baseball is Grayson Rodriguez. I don't think he threw over 90 pitches all year. Now, maybe that's the pandemic, maybe that's whatever, but this guy's going to be really good. But if they had told me, Jim, you only get 90 pitches in Aberdeen, South Dakota in 1964, I never would have been in the big leagues the next year, because I learned how to pitch the more pitches I threw.
Wow, that's brilliant. You mentioned the Rays, the pitching staff that started the postseason for the Rays accounted for 7 innings of their entire last year. Yeah, completely new. Jim, again,
they had five rookies or something like that.
Yeah, none of starting pitchers. This has been a tremendous honor. I do have one last question for you. Your list of accolades is just tremendous. Is there one of those that you're most proud of?
I think the 20 games. You know, I used to sit with Mike Flanagan, the late Mike Flanagan, on the first row of the bulkhead.
What a good Irishman.
Oh yeah, well, no, fabulous kid, and so he wins the Cy Young in 1979. Goes 23-9. You know, he had, you know, a little ERA, a little over 3 runs a game. He had a couple really bad games. You know, 7 runs in 2 1/3 innings. And he looks at me when we're starting in 1980. You know, we're leaving Miami to, you know, go start the season. He says, "How did you ever win 20 games 8 out of 9 years?" I said, "Well, you got to be a little obsessed." You know, when the snow's on the ground or it's halftime, and, you know, when the Colts or whatever are playing, you put on your running shoes and you go run 3 miles. My youngest daughter, Kelly, used to go run with me when she was 7, and she could only stop once, and she ended up running marathons and things like that. You know, it was a goal. You know, once you win 20, yeah, you got a $15,000 raise back then. You know, Dave McNally had done that, and, you know, he got won 20 games. I think it was his first or second 20-game winner, and he got a $15,000 raise. And we go, hey, if we win 20, we can get a $15,000 raise, and that was always my goal. If you want a Cy Young, maybe you get an extra 5. that's how hard you had to work for your money back then. So it kind of drove you. And, I think the ultimate thing is when a guy just won the Cy Young Award looks at you in the next seat and says, how'd you ever do it 8 out of 9 years? But I think consistency. And that's why I never left the Orioles. We had great teams. And, why go anywhere else when all you knew you had to do is figure out how to stay healthy, because you were going to have a chance to go to the postseason, which was kind of what Earl Weaver told us every year. We play together and play as one and, use our whole 40-man roster. And it was a great ride.
Awesome. I was looking at it. I thought you were going to say the fact that you never give up a grand slam.
Well, that wasn't too bad either. He once wanted me to, Earl, late in my career, wanted me to walk John Lowenstein to get to Al Oliver to load the bases up. And I told him, I handed him the ball. I said, here, you pitch. I'm going to go manage. He says, walk him. And I did. And I told Rick Dempsey, another Irishman, I said, Demper, just sit on the outside corner. I'll walk in and run. Probably, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, Tim Kirchin, who used to write for the Baltimore Sunnies on, on ESPN. He comes down and we're on the field early at Camden Yards, and he has a piece of paper, like that. And he says, Cakes, he said, the boys up from Bristol, that's ESPN. He's 13 names. He said, they said, you won't know what these names are. And I looked at the piece of paper and I said, must have been the guys I walked with the bases loaded. He said, I told him you would know. I said, I don't really remember doing that. I just know that's the only logical answer why you'd have 13 names on a piece of paper. So apparently I walked with the bases loaded 13 guys. Oh. But if you're a math, you don't have to be a math major to know that one's better than four.
One's better than four, that's for sure. So last thing, you just mentioned cakes. So you got that nickname because you like to eat pancakes before every start, a bit like Boggs on a chicken. Do you still like pancakes?
No. Well, I like them. I just don't.
Don't eat them like that. And did you know? Are we just talking plain pancakes, or were you a chocolate chip guy? Or
no. But I will say this: I had blueberry pancakes at the the Sheridan Hotel where we stayed in Boston. They brought them, and I was going to try to make the bus and get to the ballpark and pitch that day. We won 17-3. So sometimes I had to go for blueberry pancakes because we got a lot of runs. It's hard to lose with 17 runs.
That's pretty good. Jim, I really appreciate this. Thank you again.
Oh, Shaun, my pleasure.
Listening. For doing this, and we will send you the package. You're now a member of the Irish American Baseball Society. And again,
well, it's funny. My wife, every time they do more and more refined DNA tests, they find out that I'm more and more Irish. I'm almost like 100%. And I told you you told me, how many cousins will I have?
Oh, you'll end up with, trust me, you'll end up with 460 cousins.
Well, do I have 1 minute to tell you one quick story?
Sure, you have as long as you want.
Pat, on the way, he lives up in Orlando. They had gone on a cruise. They're coming for Fort Lauderdale, and my wife Susan says, "Why don't you meet us at Emerald Dunes, Irish Emerald Dunes golf course, and we'll have lunch." So we're sitting there. First thing out of his mouth, because I don't really, he has a nice, this is what 4 or 5 years ago. So. Jim, what happened in 1969? I said, what are you talking about, Pat? He said, oh, the Mets. Didn't you lose the World Series to the Mets? I said, no, I put that out of my mouth, my mind. I don't, like it never happened. The Mets had a great year, and we beat Seaver in the first game and then lost 4 in a row. And he tells me, he said, Jim, I used to come see you at Yankee Stadium. I said, well, you just told me you were Met fans. He goes, well, I am. He says, but I hate the Yankees, and you used to always beat them. So he would come every time I would come to New York, and then we ended up being cousins. But, he was good friends with Ken Venturi. He used to do all kinds of golf, golf events, charity things. And actually, Ken would invite him to the Masters. Now, I played in Augusta. I played there 2 days, but never, obviously never there at the Masters. But he said he would actually go up with the tower. To when he used to be on doing the, I guess it was at CBS for years, 30 years or something like that. But he was really good friends with him. But he was a Gaelic football player. They actually went to Ireland, and he played in England. So he was quite an athlete. So it's interesting. They'll come to Yankee Stadium, and with all the protocols and all that, I'd have to go out before the game or after the game and talk to them and all that. It's not like the old days where you can actually have people up in the booth. But it's really kind of nice to meet my cousins. But the more again we're trying to test, the more Irish I become. Having my parents come from County Clare and County Leitrim.
Well, hopefully when the dust settles and stuff like that, we can maybe we can get you to come to Ireland with us. We're hoping to put together a couple of Irish American Baseball Society golf get-togethers where you can come and golf, and because there's some. I mean, the scenery is beautiful, and perfect weather for golf. You're a big golfer, and remember the great thing about golfing in Ireland, especially during the summer, is it stays bright till 10 o'clock at night.
Aha.
So that gives you extra time to look for the ball.
More time to look for the ball, right? Yeah, exactly.
Again, thank you very much for this.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your off season, and hopefully before all is said and done, we can get together.